In this video I'm going to show you how I take a stock 4J Beetle steely rim like this one and turn it into a widened rim like this. Coming up, I want to fit these fat little low profile 15-inch tires to the Renault bug, so I need wider rims. So this is a 15-inch tire, which means it will fit that stock 15-inch Beetle rim, but as you can see the rim is way too narrow, so I would like to widen this rim to 8J, and then the tire will sit very nicely, and of course then it will look cool too. I built this contraption that's going to help me do the job. Let me explain to you what's going on here. So my mate Niels, aka Bagger, donated an old Beetle spindle with drum that is welded to this frame here. This piece of pipe is just a carry handle for my contraption. And then my deal with him is that he will also be able to use this machine. So now obviously we can bolt the Beetle rim on there. Then I've got the grinder bolted to this pedestal. The pedestal can swivel down here on this piece of pipe that is fitted over another piece of pipe. Got some locking bolts down here, so we can adjust this position this way and that way as well. And then this T-handle is welded to this piece of threaded rod or threaded bar or whatever you want to call it. And with this we can now move the grinder closer to the drum here, as you can see, in or out. So we are now able to adjust our depth of cut. Of course you can get all fancy and complicated when you build a contraption like this. I mean, you could do a chained motor drive for turning that drum. You could even build it in a way that it will accept all kinds of rims, not only just Beetle as in my case. So obviously this one is only good for a Beetle rim. But I just built this with offcuts I found here in a shop. It's perfectly good enough for what I want to achieve, which is to widen my Beetle rims, and then also for my mate Bagger down the line. Right, so now with my rim bolted on here, I think you can figure where I'm going to go with this. Because what I can do now is switch on my grinder, then turn it in with the T-handle there until it starts touching, and I can spin my rim to start cutting a nice parallel and accurate slot. Keep turning it in until I've cut as deep as I want. I think it's going to work very well. So if you have a look in here, I'm turning my T-handle and the blade starts moving in, and now we are just touching right there. If I switch my grinder on now, we can start cutting. And now I want to actually show you how out of true a stock pressed Beetle rim actually is, or out of round. I mean, my rim is fastened tightly onto the brake drum. There's no play in the bearings on the spindle. So you can see we're touching there at the moment. So I'm going to turn it now, and you will see where's that spot. I'm going to keep lookout there. You can already see a gap. Touching. And there we've got quite a big gap opening up there. It's hard for you to see from your perspective, but me peeping down here, I would imagine that's at least 2 millimeters. So yeah, that just shows you that a stock OEM pressed Beetle rim is not exactly a truly round business. Well, it is what it is. We're gonna have to live with it. Ruber Owen metal pressings, made in South Africa, 4J15. Well, it's not gonna stay a 4J for much longer. So now this bit is important. If you look in here carefully, you can see right there that my cut is now just showing. I kept adjusting my depth of cut until that cut was just showing here. So that means we only cut through the outer pressing, and that's important. Yeah, sorry about the shadows, but this is the best I can do. You gotta have a look in here, it's important. I also adjusted the position of my cut so that it falls just behind this welded part here. So it goes through there, obviously behind this pressing, and then it's just visible up there. And so I'm referring to this distance in from here. At what point do we make the cut? That's what I was talking about. In my case, it worked out to be 65 millimeters. I measured it on the inside first. So I got another rim here, just to show you more clearly what I'm talking about. So where that black line is, that's where I want to cut. So it falls just on that side of this, of where the inner pressing is welded to the outer pressing. And then of course we only want to cut through the outer pressing, not through the inner pressing. So we are carefully adjusting our depth of cut until we're just seeing it come through here, and then we stop. And on the rim I have here, if I lay a flat edge across here and I measure into where I want to make that cut, I have got a little bit more than 60. It's not critical, you've got a bit of movement or room for doing it. Anything between, in my case, 65 to 60 will be good. Okay, I've put my contraption here on the floor just so you can see better. So I'm quite confident now that I've cut through the outer pressing only. So if everything goes according to plan, I should be able to knock that section off, and this should remain behind. It's a tight fit, so it's best to go all the way around while you're turning it. If it doesn't move, you need to cut a little bit more. Let's see what's going to happen. I see movement, so that's good. Let me keep going. Right, let me bring you in here so you can see. So look in here, you can see the two pieces are starting to separate all the way around. Let's knock it a few more times. Can you see my gap is opening up? It's going to pop off just now. Oh, and it's good we see these now. I always make reference marks, and then I know how it lined up originally if I ever needed it. Rather safe than sorry, and that's what these lines are for. Right, couple more whacks and it should come right off. Voila! So I've cut the strips for widening my wheels from 3mm plate, 1/8 of an inch. The length is the full width of the sheet, or a standard sheet, 4 foot, 1.2 meters. And the width here of the sheets, or of my strips rather, is 100mm, 4 inches, because my standard rims are 4J, and I now want to make them 8J, so I need to add 4 inches. I decided to just cut them with the grinder, with a zip cut. It just gives a nice clean, accurate edge. I could have used a plasma cutter, and then I had to chip off some slag and all that. But I like this. Those discs Now I buy them in bulk, so they only cost me about R9 each. That's about 50 US cents. So I'm not complaining. I don't mind using the discs. Right, so I suppose next up we have to start thinking about making these things curvy worthy. I rolled out my little slip roller that I built many years ago, dusted off the cobwebs. I tell you, the dust and the forms of wildlife I get in this shop, spiders, mice, frogs, I've seen some owls in here, obviously chasing the mice, I guess. Sometimes even snakes, monkeys on the roof. If you're nervous of that kind of thing, you're not going to be comfortable in here with me. But anyway, so I want to now turn my flat strips into a nice circle using my slip roller. If you don't have a slip roller, it shouldn't cost a fortune to get these done at an engineering or fabrication shop. So I've got to crank down the same amount on each side, otherwise I'm going to end up with a cone-shaped piece. So let's go down on this side, say one turn. Let's just see how it feels. Now we're getting a little bit of a curve. Give it another crank. Yes, now we're starting to go. And another one. Right, so I must just go measure the diameter of my rim so that we can roughly match the curve that we want to roll, or the diameter. Let's see, this inner part of the rim here measures about 33 centimeters, 13 inches. So that's approximately what we want. You see, this rim's got a bit of a dent here. We'll just hammer that out. And here we currently have a little bit more than 15 inches, 30, almost 9 centimeters. So a little bit more. Let's give it another half a turn here and see what we get. Look at that, half a turn can make quite a difference. Now I reckon it's probably now smaller than what we need, but that doesn't matter because we can just spring it open a little bit. No, actually not, eh? We are actually even still a little too big. I measure about 14 inches, 35. A little bit more still. Let's give it a quarter. Right, now we're just a little bit under 31 inches, 31 centimeters, 12.5 inches. That's good enough. You can just spring it open a little bit. Just want to roll this last bit here, that we got the same thing. That's important. I'm going to temporarily spring it open here. Okay, I think that's good enough. Right, let's take it up. So on some of these slip rollers you can actually remove the top roller, but that's not the case here, so I'm just going to have to kind of spring it out, maneuver it out, if you know what I mean. It's just going to be a little bit of a struggle, but we'll get it out. Come on. Here you go. I said it was going to be a little bit of a struggle, but we've got something to work with now. Check this diameter again. Yes, very close. So now we just got to cut it to length, because it's obviously now longer than what we need. Right, so now this piece of that outer pressing is removed. That piece of the outer pressing is still welded to the center section. So everything this side is still intact and straight and good. And now what the plan is, this used to sit like that, right? Now remember we rolled that section of, what was it now, 1/8, 3mm plate. 4 inches, 100 mm wide, so this is going to move out. That piece is going to go in there, and that's going to widen our rim. Yeah, you don't have to go 4 inches. If you only want to do a 6J or something like that, then this piece will only be 2 inches. And now this, shall we call it a landing here? It's, like I said, it's going to go a long way towards helping us line everything up, making the whole thing work well. It's going to make our life a lot easier. Let's have a closer look and see how well we did here with the cutting. Yeah, it's looking good, eh? I mean, we barely touched this inner section. There's not even a ridge here. So that's nice. It means we've basically just cut through the outer section, barely touched the inner section. And that is the beauty of being able to adjust the grinder with that contraption I built that can adjust your depth of cut so that it's nice and accurate, because we don't want to cut into the inner pressing. And then this is that other section where you can see through, that I showed you earlier, where you could just see the cut starting to show from the inside. Yeah, looking good. So while I was cleaning off this rust here, I got thinking that I've now exposed a part of this rim that hasn't seen the daylight in, what, at least 50 years. Can it be? I mean, assume early 70s, it's now 2024, yeah, 50 years or more. Can you believe it? I mean, cars from the 70s are now 50 years and more. Jeez, I'm turning into freaking vintage myself. I mean, I grew up with cars from the 70s. It's actually a scary thought when you realize you are the same age as old people. So I've taken the rim off of my contraption, and I have now slipped over my steel ring, which is still too long. Just got some clamps holding it in place, and now I need to carefully mark it and then cut it so that we've got a nice butt joint here. Not too big of a gap and not too small of a gap. It must be just right, so I'm just going to make sure I get that right. So I'm just going to scribe it and add a little bit more, and hopefully it all works out. Right, so I cut my ring to length and I cleaned it up a bit. And now the advantage of over rolling it, if I can put it like that, is it will just spring on nicely, something like that. But now what happened here? Why is this gap so big? I thought I measured carefully. I'm sure someone must have messed with the calibration settings on my scribe. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a better gap. Oh well, it is what it is. We'll have to deal with it. They say the difference between an average craftsman and a skilled craftsman is that the skilled craftsman only knows more ways in which to hide his mistakes. So we will just have to pull a trick out of the bag to sort this out. It's not the end of the world. So I've got my half a rim back onto the drum here, and I'm still pissed off about my cap here, that's too big. But I'm now going to clamp tack, and work my way all along, all the way around until back to this point. And hopefully by doing that my gap will close up a little bit, because it's not sitting exactly flush everywhere. Let's see. Right, like this all the way around. So apart from clamping it down, I also made sure that my ring was pushed tight against my cut line. I mean, the cut line is straight. We did it on the, so we call it my jig. The edge of my ring is straight, but that was a straight cut. So making sure that it sits tight, just make sure that everything will line up properly. And I did bevel the edge of my ring, and I did bevel this edge here as well, so that I can get some good weld penetration. And now I've got tacks all the way around. There we go. And yes, my freaking gap did not get much better. I reckon it's probably about 1/8 of an inch, if not more, 3-4 millimeters. Hey, I'm pissed off with myself about this, but I'll make it work. We'll fix it. So this outer edge is also straight, but I'm just going to bevel it in preparation for my weld seam. So you can see my bevel, and I just left a little bit there of the flat part just to maintain my straight edge. This will now give me good weld penetration when I do the weld. Same dealio here with the other part of the rim. A 45 bevel and a little bit of the flat straight part left, just so we can line it up nicely. So with the outer piece of this rim now clamped on here, I'm going to use my ring, or the edge of my ring, to line this up. I mean, my ring here, the two cuts I made on it is straight and parallel to each other. I took great care with that. The cut on this outer piece is also nice and straight and parallel to everything, because I cut it with my jig thing that we're sitting on here. So if I now just clamp it and tack it and work my way along, clamp, tack, all the way around, I reckon we should be fine. We are gonna find out. So let me do that. I can feel here on the inside that it's flush. Same here. So let's give it a tack next to this clamp. Next to this clamp as well. I'm going to move my clamps up. Next spot. Oh, that's nice and flush. So I'm going to just keep doing that all the way around, and I'm going to keep making sure that my outer rim is pressed flush against the ring, so that the gap remains the same right through. Right, it's stacked on all the way, and now is the moment of truth. I've just clamped on this piece of flat part that I sharpened to a point. It's going to act as my dial indicator. And let's first test the original part of the rim. And you can hear there's a high spot. So it touches right there. And it would be difficult to show you, but if I peek in there, I'm guessing we got a runout of about a millimeter, maybe a millimeter and a half. And that's on the original pressed rim. So like I said before, they're not that accurate. Let's now measure it on the welded on part, or tacked on at this point, and see what we get. Right, now let's see this side. High spot, clear, back to that high spot again. Now I'm going to have a look in there. Let's see. Millimeter and a half. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and call it 2 millimeters. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that is acceptable. So it didn't turn out too bad. Yeah, not much worse than the original rim. There is this flat spot right here on the bead where it got knocked at some point, no doubt. You can see it. Yeah, right there. But I'm just going to hammer that out. That's not the end of the world for me either. Otherwise it's not too bad. I think I'm going to live with this. For me this is good enough. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're building a high-speed car here, is it? I mean, little 1300cc engine. My wife piddling along to town at 50 miles an hour, because that's about the speed she drives. Maybe some dogs in the back. As long as it's strong and welded properly, it doesn't come apart, I think we're good. So just to show you here, there are no gaps. It's flush. Because I wanted that to line it all up, but I've got my bevels grinded, so yes, I'll get some good weld penetration here. I'm happy. Here on the inside you can see it's tight, there's no gap whatsoever. So the plan is now, once I've welded it on the outside, in that bevel I just showed you, I'll grind this back and create a groove, and then weld it on the inside as well. And then grind it flush nicely to clean it up, that it'll look good. So now I just got to weld this thing together, and it's probably not necessary, but I'm not going to run a continuous bead. I'll do the old staggered weld thing, you know, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, that kind of thing. I grounded back my butt joint here on the inside of the rim, so now I can weld that up as well. Here's a close-up shot of that inside seam that's now all nice and flush and looking smart. So here on the inside, you will remember that you could see the cut line in that area there. So after welding the outside, I just grooved this area with the grinder and ran a bead there as well. And while I was at it, I also gave it a bead along there. This is an original factory weld. Same there on that side. And my first 15 by 8J Beetle steely rim is done. Fully welded here on these seams. Also welded the inside seam right here and then grinded that nice and flush. Yeah, so now I've just got to do the same thing 3 more times. My 4 rims are finally widened. Phew, that was quite a bit of work. I'm sure glad that's out of the way. I can't wait to get tires on these rims. Stick the body back onto the pan so we can see what this little car is going to look like. It's going to be very exciting. But I first have to paint these rims. And for that I'm going to have to consult the wife. What color wheels does she want on her little Renault bike? I'm thinking black. I think black will look cool. But I've got a sneaky suspicion she's going to call yellow. And yellow is pretty. What color do you suggest? And please don't say red. I mean, then it's really going to look like a naughty car. Let me know in the comments what color you think will work best for the rims. I've got some Beetle hubcaps that I want to run. Hubcaps, is that what you call them in other parts of the world? Well, that's what we call them here. So now, with the chrome and this being black, I think that will really look cool. But that's just my opinion. What do you think? 3 of these little clips that hold the hubcaps, wheel caps, whatever in place were missing on this one rim. So I just made some new ones. I guess they should be made from spring steel, but I didn't have any of that. So I just cut strips of stainless steel and then bent them up to the same shape as some of the original ones. And I touched them here with a little bolt. Yeah, and it seems to work alright. So I'm going to make a list of all the colors that you guys are suggesting in the comments. We'll show it to the wife. And then she can make the final call. I nearly said something I shouldn't say. And then we can take it from there. So in the meantime, thanks for hanging out with me and following along in my process of widening these Beetle rims. I'll see you in the next video when we get the color onto these rims, we paint them, and who knows what else. Until then, have a lucky one, my brothers.
Whatever makes you happy, it just depends on you. So think a little bigger and